that cat. Not to go on the counters, not to go on my bed. That's why I said to her, what
Hi.
are these cats doing? You can
Yeah,
train
how
a
you doing?
cat.
Oh, well, thank God, you.
You can
Got it.
train a cat. She's not my cat. She said I could squirt them until they were soaking wet.
They're
They love
sparkling?
water.
You smart.
Now we have the freedom,
Nice.
and we don't want the
Yeah,
responsibility.
me too.
Those are the
That's
smart.
Well, neither did we, but I don't
Those
know
are
something
just
happened,
mine.
I don't know.
Brighten up the
That's
room.
how I feel.
We don't go that far, we don't travel.
Jack, how you doing?
Not bad for a young kid, but I'll get better.
Hey, man. I like hanging out with you, you know, it makes me feel younger.
In about 30 years, you can say that.
I've been hanging out with this 98-year-old guy.
What are you doing with such young guys?
You know, it makes me feel young.
Did you have a busy Christmas?
Guys are busy all the time.
I wore the suit 3 times, I wore it out. So tired of it, I had to pack it away for another year.
Do you really,
Well, yeah, I use it here,
Jack.
you know, when the housing the homeless here. And the caring community does their day, so I put it on here. And then my work, and then I saw it online.
How are you?
Oh, you can wear it to work. So I wore it to work on Friday before Christmas, I had to wear it all day.
You probably don't have one of these.
So I mean,
Go,
it's a weird
welcome.
belly, why not, right? And then the kids here, they run up and gave me a hug. The first thing they did was come down the fair. I said, whoa, that's real.
I think my sister, he goes to, he dabbles in, I think, the funds. Yeah, my sister goes sometimes once in a while, she used to. Mother, and then she like dressed her maybe once a week or something.
We've been looking at, hello everybody, how you doing? We've been looking at another distinction of a complete tzaddik. This is, sorry, we're jumping in the middle, right? We've been looking for several months at this sort of the informational section of our user's guide for the soul. We've learned about the structure of the soul. We've learned about the 10 inner dimensions of the soul, the 3 outer garments of the soul, the many, many organs of the soul, and the fact that there's 2 souls. So it may be good to look at, on YouTube we have a review of chapters 1 to 8, like trying to get, covers the basic topics.
Have you been studying this before, this is not the beginning?
No, we've been going for 6 months, but you can join. I put a tool for new people online where you see a review of everything we've done. Hi online. I think Rick is joining us. Hello, Rick. So I'd advise anyone who's starting new to look over that and ask me any questions on that. But that's a lot of information about the soul. And then last chapter, chapter 9, we looked at what the divine soul, that's the godly soul of the 2 souls, would like to do, and that is always be in charge of our thought, speech, and action, and B, even transform the animal soul to become an ally, transform the animal soul and its inner aspects, the sefirot, as it were, within the animal soul, to become almost a second divine soul. So basically, we're all other-centered, we're all positive, we're all productive. And then this chapter, we've been looking at the tzaddik and how you define a tzaddik. And we have 2 definitions, a complete and incomplete.
Oh, sorry.
Right? An incomplete tzaddik really has no inner sense of self-centeredness or ego. They don't have any counterproductive impulses that occur to them. And if you look at the difference between conscious thought and involuntary thought, right? Conscious thought versus involuntary thought. We can think consciously about whatever we want. I could say, picture a pink elephant, and boom, we're all picturing a pink elephant. That's my conscious thought to continue thinking about it. But when I walk down the street and it occurs to me, hey, why don't you X, Y, Z, that's just popping up from what we call the emotional realm, from my heart. Those things that pop into my mind, we're calling that involuntary thought. So a tzaddik not only has control over the conscious thought, but even the involuntary thought. They just don't have counterproductive instincts. Everything that occurs to them is really there to help another person, to get closer to God, to do a good Jewish thing, whatever it may be. So they've completely transformed, if they're a complete tzaddik, that the inner aspects of the animal soul. If they're an incomplete tzaddik, they feel like they've transformed and they still don't have any problematic impulses, but there's still a little bit of residue left there. And we find it coming out in various things, but ultimately it's hard for them to even know. So someone who's a tzaddik may not be sure if they're a Beinoni, a tzaddik, a complete tzaddik. Really, it's an inner aspect.
The opposite of the conscious soul is not unconscious.
Yeah, it's true. You make a good distinction that once something pops in my mind, now it's conscious. So maybe involuntary is a better word, if you like. But I'm not consciously choosing to have that thought, is my point. It's about will, conscious will. So I have conscious thought where I'm deciding to think about something. Let me sit down and consider how to educate my kids for half an hour, or let me sit down and go over that interaction, how much I hate that person. Either of those is conscious thought.
I can't hear you.
Either of those is conscious thought. What pops into my mind, I haven't consciously decided to think about that. It's coming from a place, as you're saying, in my subconscious and pops into consciousness. And then I can consciously choose to think about something else. Right? That's the work of a normal person, is to manage what thoughts I consciously think about. I don't want to get too deep into that. We've covered it a few times. And now we're looking at a second aspect of a complete tzaddik. That's that they're called Bnei Aliyah, which is literally sons of ascent. And one reason we looked at was because these people actually take their animal soul and completely elevate it, turn it into a second divine soul. And so they've taken everything about themselves and even things in their environment and elevated that stuff in a way that you and I really can't. We could do it in other ways. And then the second was, which we'll look at now, which is that they really exist only to bring joy to the Ein Sof, to God. Right? Our game, a normal person, the game is my nefesh elokit, my nefesh ba'ami, my animal soul wants self-centered pleasures, and I say, okay, I'm gonna instead of things that are childish, so like getting obsessed with food or money or inappropriate relationships, take that and replace it with I'm going to get excited about mitzvah and Torah and helping other people, right? But I'm still doing it for myself. I'm doing it because I want to do a mitzvah, and I find deeper satisfaction. There's more meaning, and I realize I'm actually going to be happier chasing after productive, meaningful activities and enjoying that than the fleeting pleasure that comes from physical stuff. But if you look at it, maybe I've gotten to a higher level, I'm more productive. There's still some me in there. I'm saying I want to feel more meaningful. I want to do a mitzvah. I want to learn Torah. I want to have the deep abiding pleasure of knowing I've helped people around me. Great, but there's still a me. At that subtle level now, where even an incomplete tzaddik has dedicated their whole lives to helping people around them, they're still saying, I want to get close to God by doing this stuff. I want to experience godliness. I want to raise myself up to that level. At a certain point, the complete tzaddik, amazingly, flips entirely, where we said now that animal soul converts to become a second divine soul, and there's no more I. That's why it took that special kind of love, an ahava shebetanugim, this love of delights, that transformed them to a complete tzaddik. And that love isn't seeking anything anymore. Right? The fiery love that we talked about that characterizes an incomplete tzaddik, they're still reaching for something. There's still a them that wants to be one with Ein Sof, with godliness. The complete tzaddik, they're called Bnei Aliyah because they don't even care about reaching godliness or God anymore. They just care about bringing God pleasure. So at that point, now there's no more fiery love. There's nothing to reach. They just, if something in their life looks like it'll bring God pleasure for that to happen, then they do it. Does it bring them pleasure? What kind of question is that, right? Does it get them closer to God? Who's asking? That's not the complete tzaddik that's asking that. That's the incomplete tzaddik or Beinoni or Russia, right? So for us, what's the highest ideal, which is dedicating my life to helping people around me and to being close to God and to improving and to doing Jewish stuff with more wisdom, that for a tzaddik is a complete fall from their level. What for me would be the pinnacle of my life's work, for a complete tzaddik would be a big descent. Because ultimately for them, there's only bringing nachas to God. That's it. Nothing about them experiencing God, nothing about them reaching God, nothing about them improving themselves, certainly nothing about them getting points in heaven because they did so many mitzvahs. All that has been converted to just godly soul. And so let's look at it inside. We're on page 159 at the 70th of Tevet, second paragraph on the page. Joey, we'll start with you. Ve'od nikraim b'nei aliyah.
Another reason? Another reason for their destination of B'nai Aliyah.
So the second reason, as we're saying, why they're called children of ascent. מפני שגם עבודתם בבחינת ועשה טוב, בקיום התורה ומצוותיה הוא לצורך גבוה ומעלה מעלה עד רום המעלות.
Even their divine service in the area of doing good, in their fulfillment of Torah and its mitzvot, is for the sake of all. And their service is directed toward a most high level, toward the loftiest heights.
So their work in doing good, it's not, oh, I want to improve myself, I want to expand myself, I want to experience godliness, all amazing character traits. But they're past that already, and now they're just saying, it's just about God. I'm only doing this for God. There's no me involved, not even spiritual pleasure or joy of godliness. ולא כדי לדווקא בו יתברך בלבד לרבות צמאון נפשם הצמאה לשם.
Their divine service is not intended merely to attach themselves to God by serving Him through Torah and mitzvot, so as to quench the thirst of their soul, which thirsts for God. The divine service of tzaddikim of lower levels may indeed be for the purpose of stilling their thirst for God and their desire to cleave to Him. For indeed, the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvot satisfies these needs.
Make sense? Right. So even on a lower level tzaddik, a tzaddik with some work left to do will have this thirst to complete that, to have total oneness with Ein Sof. And they'll experience a love like flames. But once they reach that love of delights, which is more like tranquil water, now they're no longer reaching for something, and they're not even thinking about their own very lofty experience.
So there's no intent, really?
It's God's intent. It becomes God's intent.
Whatever you want to call it, for their all intents and purposes, they don't have an intention. It's just, that's just the way you do it.
There's no ego, it's all bittul.
Yeah, so I have a self-centered ego, which is called nefesh bamit in this context, which takes care of me, which wants me to be satisfied, wants me to expand and grow. And that whole drive has been converted to just divine soul drive, which is basically, that is Ein Sof. It's a literal piece of Ein Sof. So now the question doesn't apply, right? You're saying, you know, whose agenda is this? There isn't any more me to have an agenda. It's just Ein Sof agenda.
That's just how you do it.
Yeah. כמו שכתוב, הוי כל צמא לכו למים.
As is written, Ho exclaims the prophet, all who are thirsty for godliness should go to the waters of Torah. Let them engage in Torah, which is likened to water.
וכמו שנתבאר במקום אחר. Right, as it explained. As
I'm sorry.
yeah, it's okay.
As it explained elsewhere, that the thirsty ones of this verse refer to those who thirst for godliness. The prophet's words prove this point. Were he addressing those who thirst for Torah, he need not exclaim, "Ho!" No, direct them to its waters. Whoever thirsts for Torah will find it readily available for study. Rather, the prophet is addressing those who thirst for God, advising them to slake their thirst for Him through Torah, which binds one to God. The men of ascent, however, whom we have been discussing, are beyond the level of divine service. They do not study Torah or perform mitzvot with the intention of quenching their own thirst for godliness. For such service is, in a subtle sense, self-serving, as it is motivated in one's desire for a certain spiritual profit, namely, the bliss of closeness to God.
So here, the prophetic from Isaiah, the quote, "If you're thirsty, go to water," right? It's telling people, you want to reach godliness. We understand now that Torah and mitzvah are actually connecting channels that connect us to the Ein Sof, because Chochmah of Ein Sof, the intellect of the Ein Sof, is not splittable off from Ein Sof. It's not divisible. And when you learn Chochmah of Ein Sof, which is any Torah that we're learning, now you're actually encountering Chochmah of Atzilus directly. You're encountering the intellect of God directly. And it's not like you could say, oh, this is just God's intellect separate from God. You're actually creating a union with God's intellect that's impossible to get when you're a soul not in a body. And same thing with a mitzvah, right? When we come to Shabbat and we light candles, or when we say prayers at Temple Israel, it feels like we're just physical bodies going through some physical rituals. On a spiritual level, we're encountering even higher Ratzon of Ein Sof and Ratzon of Atzilus, which you can't encounter on a spiritual plane. You can only do it in the physical. So Isaiah is saying, if you want to meet God, learn Torah, do mitzvahs, recognize that these are channels beyond even meditating and experiencing a sense. But the whole thing is actually beneath the level of a complete tzaddik. A tzaddik is beyond that. They're not thirsty anymore. There's no them to be thirsty. They don't go to the Torah to quench their thirst. They simply have transformed any self-centered drive whatsoever has now become a channel for the drive of the Ein Sof, the drive of the divine soul.
How does he recognize that he's attained that position?
He probably doesn't think about it, or she doesn't think about it, right? Because I'm the kind of person that I'm like, I wonder what level I am this year. How much did I improve? Where am I at? Am I better than 50% of every Russia, or I'm 80%? Where have I gotten right? That's a typical ego perspective. A complete tzaddik is going to wake up and say, okay, what needs doing, right? Do I need to sit and think about whether I'm complete tzaddik? Obviously not. So I'm not going to do that, right? So complete tzaddik is going to ask that question. They're not really going to be concerned.
There's always more to do.
Right.
Regardless how high you get, there's still more to do.
Right, but for them, the more to do is, wow, the world's messed up. Ein Sof put me here to help. Let me help. Does that mean I'm going to have a boring day? Who cares? Does it mean I'm going to have an elevated day? Who cares? There's no me to care. It's just what God needs. Right? So I suspect they don't really ask that question, or at least not as often as I do, as I would. Right? Ele ki tfershu batikunim ezehu chasid hamitchaser im kono im kan delay.
Rather, their service of God is as of the Tikkun Zohar explains, that which our sages have said. Who is a pious one? Chassid. He who is benevolent, mitchased, toward his creator, Kohen. The Ketunet Zohar comments that Kono, usually translated as his creator, is here to be interpreted as his nest, derived from the root ken, nest, and thus the chassid is he who is benevolent with his nest, i.e. his source, God. This benevolence toward God consists of uniting the Holy One, blessed be He, with His Shekhinah, the divine presence, so that the light of this union reach and be felt even in the lowest worlds.
So the Hebrew there was li'chada kucha brichu ushchinte ba'tachtonim. And here we're getting a kabbalistic snapshot of what we've been talking about in normal life language. Right? So normal life language, a complete tzaddik wants only to help the world around them and to do whatever Ein Sof needs. So whatever's their environment that needs improving, they're just dedicated to that. No self-centered flow. Now, what does that mean? How are they helping the Ein Sof? How are they children of ascent in that sense? Kabbalistically, they're uniting Kutsha Brichu, or Hakadosh Baruch Hu. They're uniting what's called Hakadosh Baruch Hu with the Shekhinah. That refers, if you remember the sefirot, and those of us who looked at it more closely, HaKadosh Baruch Hu refers to all the midot except Malchut. So Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, the 6 midot, the 6 emotional sefirot, but in Atzilus. So not now my attributes, not how I experience kindness or strength, but cosmic at the highest level, right? The cosmic flow of kindness, the cosmic flow of strength, the cosmic flow of compassion into the entire universe, into all of reality. That's Kuchabrichu. That's the 6 sefirot above Malchus, as they are in the world that is just godliness. Those, when a complete tzaddik does a mitzvah, those actually unite with the Shechina, which is Malchus of Atzilus. So the actual royalty or expression that exists in the world, in the highest spiritual world, as the cosmos is coming into being, is being expressed, so to speak. So normally the 6 sefirot above, they're kind of flowing into Malchus, but they're not uniting in this way. When a tzaddik does a mitzvah, it's not just great, they've done something productive. They're such a refined person that the light from that mitzvah, or as we're going to say, the waters from that mitzvah, he'll bring in that image, rise up, and they elicit a flow from within the 6 sefirot above that flow down and unite with Shekhinah. And as you'll see, it's an intimate metaphor. It's a sexual metaphor, right? So there's something like the sexual union that happens in relationships, but happening on a cosmic level whenever a tzaddik like this does a mitzvah. So I'm just next to some guy, perhaps, who's doing a blessing on bread, and maybe he's really concentrating or seems really happy about it, but all I see is, this person and some bread. But in the heavens, if I could look with my kabbalistic camera, there's actually a new flow of light that's rising up because this challah is being elevated into the spiritual, as it were, and that's causing a reaction from the 6 sefirot above that are bringing a flow of new spiritual waters down, and then there's this union that's happening that causes great delight to Ein Sof.
Is the Shekhinah the union, or the Shekhinah unites with the Malchut, the two separate entities, or is it the union?
Yeah, Shekhinah is not the union. Shekhinah is the divine presence.
Okay.
So look at it this way. I could just talk on automatic and not really have my heart or my intellect into it. Or I could be having a really important conversation, and now you sense I'm feeling what I'm saying and I've thought about what I'm saying. So within me, I've united my inner powers with my power of speech when I'm having that important conversation. There's a union that's happened. So for me, the Shekhinah is my speech, my little version of it, right? That's the presence of my emotions and intellect as it is outside. If I'm not talking, it's hard to know what I'm thinking and feeling. When I'm talking, now my thoughts and emotions have presence to people around me. That's our little mini version of the Shekhinah. Now go up to the Ein Sof. The Shekhinah is the actual presence of the Ein Sof as it is in reality. It can be hidden or it can be revealed. That's a different aspect. But now we're actually uniting the cosmic emotions with that Shekhinah. So the union is not the Shekhinah. The union is the flow of Chesed, Gvur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod into the Shekhinah. Make sense? So we're causing God, if you can say it's a cheap anthropomorphism, whatever the word is, but we're causing God to feel and think more about what's flowing into the world because of the actions of this tzaddik. God's going like, yeah, that's why I created the world, right? So obviously that's not the case. God's not a being like that. But Kabbalistically, that's one way to understand what's happening. More water is flowing into the world. There's more pleasure for the Ein Sof, and it's because of the mitzvahs of these very rare individuals.
So is that what's meant by tzaddik is able to bring revelations down from?
Yeah, exactly. This is a Kabbalistic description of it.
And God's available, is aware of the thousands of good deeds that occur down below?
Well, this is the Kabbalistic view of God's awareness, is that God's aware of everything. Not just tzaddikim, but also me and you and every thought, every emotion we have, every detail happening. What's infinite awareness means awareness of everything. So of course of tzaddikim, but also of things that to me would be seemingly inconsequential. God's infinitely aware of every detail. וכמו שכתוב ברaya מהמנה פרשת תצא, כברה דשתדל בתר אבוי ואימי דרכים לון יתר מקרבה ונפשה ורוחי ונשמתי כולו. I get the Aramaic prize for bad pronunciation. Go ahead.
Okay. As it is explained in Reina Machina or Pershat Tetz, in the manner of a son who exerts himself for his father and mother, whom he loves more than himself, more than his own nefesh, ruach, and neshama.
And so he gives us a parable, a metaphor we can relate to. Someone that cares about their parents will sacrifice everything to save their parents, to help their parents, to rescue their parents, and it goes beyond their self-interest, right? Is this something that's going to be pleasurable for them? Is it something that's going to feel worthwhile for them? Is it something that's going to be involve sacrifice for them? You don't even ask those questions. When it comes to your father or your mother, you just go and do. So that's the state of mind that these complete tzaddikim, these b'nei aliyah, or these b'nei aliyah, their state of mind is just, of course I do it for my mother and father, all the more so will I do it for Ein Sof. No questions asked. Masar gameh lemita alayhu lemifrat lo enchulu chmo shnitbayer b'makom acher.
And who sacrifices his life for the sake to redeem them, should they be held in captivity, and as it is also explained elsewhere. Such is the divine service of the man of ascent. It is the holy altruistic motivated only by a desire to please God and to make his presence felt everywhere. The altar.
Now, if I could, how you could go into a longer description about Mayin Nukvin and Mayin Dechurin. I don't think we need all the details, but remember at the beginning, God separated the upper and the lower waters, right? So that refers to, like, on one sense, rain falling from the sky versus the ocean. So there's like a physical division, but also there's a cosmic division of spiritual energy and more physical energy, call it. And at every level, you have these divisions. It represents itself on every level. So here he is describing, in sort of sexual terms, honestly, the order of how this flow happens. That for water to flow down from what we call Kucha Brichu, from the cosmic emotional sefirot, first water has to be aroused, right, be elevated from below, right? So in this case, above is masculine, below is feminine, because that's the flow of spirituality. Spiritual flowing into reality is masculine. Reality creating container to receive spiritual light is feminine. And then, of course, reflecting it back up and creating meaning out of it, creating reality out of it. So here, there's two flows happening, but the first flow that has to happen is the elevation of the feminine waters. So that's the blessing on the challah, right? That's putting a coin in a tzedakah box, right? That's honoring your parents in some way. Any Jewish practice, any mitzvah done with some intention, with kavanah, now you're taking a piece of physical reality, and you're actually spiritually, you're elevating the quantum energy, the spiritual divine light that makes up that object. You're elevating it back up, and that is creating a corresponding flow of the male waters flowing down. And easy to see how that corresponds to human intimacy and our particular waters and the orders in which they flow, etc. Right? So we're on 162. Ushnehem olim bekane echad ki al yedei haberurim shemevarim minoga malim mayin nukvin.
Both interpretations are complementary for by refining the good found in Elohim. As the men of ascent do by converting their animal soul, which is derived from Kilapat Nagam, to good, one elevates feminine waters.
Now he's saying the two aspects, that they elevate the world, so they're called Bnei Aliyah, and also that they really only do things for the nachas of the Ein Sof, so they're called Bnei Aliyah. They're related because when they elevate their own animal souls, as well as the world around them, that actually creates the responsive flow and creates pleasure for the Ein Sof. So the two aspects are actually related to each other, right? They're complementary interpretations.
Is that related to mana?
Maybe. I'm not sure. Usually there's something, yeah. Yeah, but Mayin Nukvin is the feminine, so.
But if it's elevating.
Yeah. It's worth looking at. Let me know if you find something, yeah. V'nasim yichudim elyonim lehorid mayin dechorin. Elevating?
Affecting.
Sorry, affecting.
Yeah.
Affecting unions in the higher realms so as to cause masculine waters to descend to this water.
שהם מימי החסדים שבכל מצווה, מצווה מרמ"ח מצוות עשה, שכולן הן בחינת חסדים ומים דחורים.
These masculine waters are the waters of kindness that flow into and are contained in each of the 248 positive mitzvot, which are all in the nature of kindness or benevolence, and masculine waters.
All right, so we could look at mitzvahs as being commandments. You have to do them or you'll be punished or you'll be rewarded, which is obviously immature to anyone who thinks about it for very long. Here we're saying the masculine waters come in the form of each of these positive mitzvahs. And if you want to have something like the same intimacy as married couples have, physical intimacy, those moments, with the Ein Sof, you can do it through the channel of the mitzvahs. And then a light, or in this case a water, flows down because of that in the form of whichever of these mitzvahs you're connecting through. So really these are very profound ways of connecting with the Ein Sof. And in fact, the whole metaphor of human intimacy is in a way created for us to understand this intimacy. Right? The reason human intimacy is the way it is so that we can somehow learn something about the kabbalistic intimacy we can experience through our channels of Torah and mitzvah. דהיינו, המשכת קדושת אלוהותו יתברך מלמעלה למטה להתלבש בתחתונים כמו שנתבהר במקום אחר. This term, masculine waters, as applies to mitzvahs, mean that the mitzvah draw God's holiness from above, from the higher realms downward, so that God's holiness be clothed in and revealed within the lowest realms, our physical world, as explained elsewhere. So the two interpretations are complementary. So we've had a look now at what a tzaddik is, the different levels of a tzaddik, many levels of incomplete tzaddik, and then the complete tzaddik, which is really a perfect state and very, very rare, very rare. And now we're on our way to understanding what a Beinoni is, but first we have to more closely define what a Rasha is, what a self-centered person is. So here's the next couple chapters. And then in chapter 12, we'll finally define the hero of our book, the Beinoni. So for Rasha, we want to understand the definitions from two perspectives so that we'll finally get what a Beinoni is. One I think is clear is the difference between behavior and identity. Right, so we're defining Rasha, Tzaddik, and Beinoni in terms of either behavior or identity. Identity is what's happening with the actual attributes, the sefirot as they flow within me.
Isn't that a form of the history, what's happened before?
That'll come into play. That's the second. Yeah. So give me a moment. I'll get back to that. Right. But I want to distinguish again, to be clear, between behaviors of the soul and identity of the soul. Behaviors of the soul are my three what? Garments. Thought, speech, and action. Very good. So when I think voluntarily, consciously, when I speak, and when I do a physical action, that's not the identity of the soul, right? If I did something negative, that doesn't mean now my soul's identity is negative. It is an evil soul. No, the soul is a soul. But my action, I could say, was self-centered, perhaps evil, right? So I've done, the behavior I've done has been self-centered, and that creates halakhic, legal issues, and it also creates spiritual issues. So one dimension is the behavior, thought, speech, and action, and that's the behavior of the soul. Second dimension we want to be clear about is the identity of the soul. That is, the sefirot within Nefesh Elokit and Nefesh Be'amit, what are they up to, how strong are they, which ones are flowing, and have I at all converted the midot, the emotional attributes especially, of Nefesh Be'amit to really follow the lead of Nefesh Elokit. And that's an internal reality. That's the identity of the soul. There, the soul is actually changing its citizenship. It's not just behaving differently, right? So the tzaddik, we understand, is one who on a behavioral level obviously is always productive, 100%, but also on the identity level has converted much or all of the attributes of the animal soul to be divine-oriented or other-centered. Right? So the tzaddik has got behavior and identity pretty much complete or practically complete, virtually complete. Now we're going to learn about the Rasha. In the Rasha, not only is the identity by definition imbalanced, and the divine soul has been weakened to some extent, but also there's some aspect of thought, speech, and action, behavior, that is also counterproductive. So in both aspects, the Rasha, even very subtly sometimes, we said if you just for 10 minutes waste time instead of learning Torah, now you're a Rasha. So some Rashas are at a very, very high level, basically look like a tzaddik to us, someone we want to learn from and emulate, and really a spiritual, wonderful person, but still their behavior is to some extent, even in a subtle way, like a Rasha. And then of course we know in a Rasha they haven't converted the midot of the animal soul. Right? So Rasha has both behavior and attributes like a Rasha. What is the Beinoni, to try and start to get this distinction from the perspective of behavior versus identity? The Beinoni is someone who gets their behavior just like a tzaddik. Their behavior is perfect. So no conscious thought, no speech, and no action from a Beinoni is ever counterproductive. And if I was merely looking from the outside, and I could see every thought, speech, and action, from the outside soul-wise, a tzaddik and a Beinoni is the same thing. Their behavior is the same. From the inside, however, their identity of a Beinoni, they have not even started to convert their animal soul, and often their animal soul is even stronger than when they were born, because they just, from eating permitted food and from enjoying life, the animal soul, its attributes get stronger. So the Beinoni has this inner conflict where on the inside, the identity is just like you and me, and they get all these counterproductive thoughts and have the animal soul's midot at full strength, and yet behaviorally they manage to behave like a tzaddik. So there can be great inner struggle in a Beinoni. So I won't get too deep into Beinoni, but that's one aspect, which is behavior versus identity. Is that pretty clear? Mm-hmm. But there's another confusion. Rick, you'll like this a lot, right? Because this speaks to the question we get to in the Beinoni of how is it the Beinoni has never sinned, will never sin. So that's something that's very hard to understand, how that can be said. We won't get into that. But look at a Rasha and a Beinoni. If a Beinoni is someone that gets their behavior right, and a Rasha is someone that gets their behavior wrong, what happens when the Rasha does tshuva and then for 10 minutes doesn't do anything wrong? Right? I mean, it's the end of Yom Kippur. We're all here at Temple Israel. We've all prayed and done tshuva as well as we can, and many people of the Jewish world, from a halachic perspective, right, from saying a Rasha is someone that has sinned, but then when they do tshuva, now they're a tzaddik, and then when they sin again, they're a Rasha. Right? From the halachic perspective, which is not transforming the soul, it's just have you sinned or not. Okay, it's the end of Yom Kippur. Many of them are tzaddikim, I guess, right? And if they can make it to the door without gossiping or thinking something horrible or eating something that wouldn't be kosher for them, they're a tzaddik until they mess up, right? So where's this Beinoni? And does the Rasha just flip back and forth? What does it mean, right? Look at the difference between a Rasha and a Beinoni from the perspective of just behavior, right? If a Rasha does tshuva, now are they a Beinoni? And then when they do some subtle sin, now they're a Rasha again? They flip back and forth?
No.
Right? It doesn't work like that, because we learn later the Beinoni has never sinned, will never sin. So sorry, I didn't express that too well, but the answer has to do with not the chronological behavior of the person, but their actual state of the balance between their two souls. Like, what level are they holding at? And a good way to explain it is this. I may think I'm at the level of Beinoni, and maybe, for instance, I'm pretty sure that even if I think of stealing money, I'm never going to steal it, right? I'm not a thief. I'm at the level of Beinoni, right? And certainly when it comes to stealing, I'm not going to do that. But I've never had the opportunity to steal $50 million, right? And say that opportunity came, and for some reason, so there was $50 million, sitting in bonds somewhere, and I could get away scot-free. And once in my life, I hit this experience that had been waiting for me, and now I had a chance to steal $50 million and get away for sure, right? Maybe I'd do it. Maybe I would. And what if I would? Now am I a Beinoni or Rasha? right? If you look at it as just have I sinned, now I'm still a Beinoni, right? Because I haven't sinned. But a Beinoni is not someone that hasn't sinned. A Beinoni is someone that would never sin under any circumstances. Never would have and never would, as they are in the state of a Beinoni. So that means no matter what situation, $50 million sitting there, I could take it and be wealthy beyond my dreams the rest of my life. Well, I could dream bigger, but okay, right? I wouldn't do it. And if I would do it, that means I'm still a Rasha. Right? Could I do tshuva for my sins and halachically become a tzaddik or a beinoni, whatever? Yes. But my inner state, the fact that there's the potential that I would do it, the fact that I don't have total control over my thought, speech, and action, even for something that hasn't happened yet, but that could happen, now I'm not a beinoni yet. Because a beinoni is also a level you're holding where there's just nothing in the world that would cause you to actually think, speak, or act inappropriately. Right? I mean, it would occur to me. I would look at the money and say, whoa, I could steal that, right? I'm not a tzaddik. I haven't transformed the intellect and the emotions of the animal soul. But no matter what the animal soul says, look, you could buy an island, you could run away, you could never work again, wouldn't it be great? Doesn't matter. I'm not going to think about it, not going to talk about it, not going to do it. No matter what the circumstance. So the second aspect we want to look at to understand tzaddik, rasha, and beinoni is what level am I holding at in the balance between the souls? Right? A tzaddik is someone who has completely weakened their animal soul, so that it's become a divine soul eventually. And so there's an imbalance between the two souls, and they will only do productive, and they'll only think productive, etc. And even on the inside, their whole identity is productive. A rasha, there's an imbalance where the divine soul has, so to speak, been weakened, and now the animal soul can actually think, speak, and act, and they will think, or say counterproductive things, and their identity is also that. A beinoni is one where both souls are at full strength. Right? So they're holding where both souls are full strength, and for reasons we'll understand later, when both souls are at full strength, nefesh elokit always gets its way. And nefesh beinoni never gets to actually express. Even though it's at full strength, then it will try and try and try and try, and I will have the same inner life as a normal person, because I've allowed my nefesh elokit and built it up to the point where it's at full strength. For reasons we'll understand in chapter 12 and 13, the divine soul, no matter what happens, will always make sure $50 million, you can get away scot-free, don't even think about it. No matter what the situation. Right? That kind of makes sense? Mm-hmm. All right, let's dig in. Let's start on page 165 at the top of the Hebrew. V'zeh lumat zeh rasha v'tov lo lumat tzadik v'ra lo.
One is the opposite of the other. The rasha, who knows good, is the antithesis of the tzaddik, who knows evil.
Right, so let's not get into the whole conversation about free will, but for us to have free will, for life to have meaning, there has to be a choice between good and bad, outside and inside. So everything is created as a symmetrical mirror, as it were, and everything that exists on the side of holiness exists on the side of unholiness. So
tzaddik who knows evil would be an incomplete tzaddik?
Exactly, yeah. And a rasha who knows good is an incomplete rasha. So the terms we have on the side of the tzaddik who knows evil and the tzaddik who knows good, have their complementary terms. Now we'll learn the rasha who knows good and the rasha who knows evil. And also the other terms, complete and incomplete. Deinu shehatov shebenafsho helokit shebemocho uvechalal hayimini shebelibo.
This means that the good that is in this Rasha's divine soul, which is in his brain and in the right part of his heart, these being the chief dwelling places of the divine soul, as explained in chapter 9.
Right, so we learned in chapter 9, whether you're a rasha or tzaddik or beinoni, the divine soul primarily is comfortable intellectually in the brain, and then it extends into the right part of the heart, or the part of the heart that deals with oxygen and spirituality. The animal soul is housed in the blood in the left part of the heart. That's the part that pumps more to the body, and there they meet, and there they kind of go at each other, right? So the rasha still has good in the rasha's divine soul, comes through the brain to the right part of the heart. כפוף ובטל לגבי הרע מהקליפה שבחלל השמאלי.
Is subservient to and nullified within the evil of the animal soul, which stems from the klipa, which is in the left part of the heart, as explained in chapter 9. Thus, in the Rasha who knows good, the evil of the animal soul overpowers the good of the divine soul to the extent that the good is subservient to the evil and is nullified within it.
Right, so sound familiar? Right? Ever had a moment of weakness? Ever had a moment where you said, "Who was that? Why did I yell at that person? Why did I do that?" Right. So this is a normal state where the tzaddik is an unusual individual, where the divine soul is so powerful that it actually converts and overpowers the animal soul. So the animal soul becomes not even a conscious drive. Now here you have a Rasha who knows good. They have good in them, but the divine soul is not at its full strength. So the animal soul is able to overpower it and is able to express in thought, speech, and action. And while that's happening, the divine soul is just sitting there going, maybe not, right, not a bad idea. Right. The divine soul gets kind of covered up by the energy of the animal soul. What that looks like is normal life. We have moments of weakness where we let ourselves down and we do what we don't intend to do. And there's still some part of us that's kind of like not happy with it, but while we're doing it, what's going on with that part of us? It's trapped or dormant or asleep, depending on the level, but it's not able to control our thought, speech, and action. Therefore, we have moments of letting ourselves down, right? Welcome to being human. כפוף ובטל לגבי הרע מהקליפה שבחלל השמאלי. Oh, did I do that right? Yeah. וזה מתחלק גם כן לרבבות מדרגות חלוקות.
This rank too is subdivided into myriads of degrees which differ. Just as the rank of the tzaddik who knows evil is subdivided into myriads of degrees with respect to the nullification within him of the evil to good, so too are there numerous subdivisions within the rank of the Rasha who knows good, with respect to the nullification of good to evil, as the Alter Rebbe continues.
So if you remember, we talked about the tzaddik viralo, the incomplete tzaddik. There were 18,000 levels, right? You had somebody who had nullified their animal soul to the degree of 1 in 60, and now it was finally nullified, but it was the threshold at which that can happen, and they're like a beginner tzaddik, a beginner incomplete tzaddik, so to speak. Then you have someone that has nullified even more, maybe 1 in 100, then one that's 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000, and you have many, many, many levels of an incomplete tzaddik, depending on how fine-tuned they have switched over their animal soul, to how completely. Now we have the same thing on the level of a Rasha. So there's someone who the animal soul is able to overpower their divine soul only inconsequentially and only occasionally and only in one dimension. And then you have ones where it happens more regularly and in multiple dimensions, thought, speech, or action.
What dimension is that?
Thought, speech, or action. The 3 dimensions are thought, speech, or action. So I might sit and think about an appropriate relationship, but I'm not talking about or doing anything, so now I'm sitting in my thought, and I'm a Rasha, but only in a dimension of thought. I haven't actually made a plan to try and carry this out, right?
What are the numerous subdivisions we're talking about?
This is what I'm describing. So a very high level incomplete Rasha would look very, very holy and would always be doing amazing things. But every so often, as you said, they had time to learn Torah and they didn't. And now they're a Rasha. Give me a break, right? This is some Rasha. So that's the highest level, where only in thought do they, in a very inconsequential way, seemingly allow their animal soul to express. And all the way down to somebody who decides they want to steal something and thinks about it and then makes a plan with people and then actually carries it out. Now they're consciously committed to this sin, and they've thought about it, they've spoken about it, they've carried it out with full volition, and now their whole being is caught up. That's a much more serious Rasha compared to this guy or this woman that didn't study Torah for 10 minutes.
So you're referring to the subdivisions as levels?
Yes, subdivisions are levels. Yes. בעניין כמות ואיכות הביטול וכפיפת הטוב לרע חס ושלום.
The difference between the myriad degree lies in the quantity, the extent and quality of the nullification and subservience of the good to the evil, God forbid.
Right, so he's going to go into quantity and quality. So whether it's really they're basically half self-centered, or whether it's just a tiny bit self-centered, and also then what dimensions of their being it's expressed in. יש מי שהכפיפה והביטול אצלו מעט מזר.
There is one in whom the subservient and nullification of good to evil are exceedingly minor.
It's still a Russia, but it's just every now and then something happens, and in a minor way, right? ואף גם זאת אינו בהתמידות ולא תדיר לפרקים קרובים.
And even these minor degrees are not permanent or recurrent at frequent intervals.
אלא לעתים רחוקים מתגבר הרע על הטוב וחובש את העיר קטנה הוא הגוף.
Rather, only in the infrequent occasion does the evil prevail over the good, conquering the small city, the body which, as mentioned in chapter 9, is likened to the small city, whose conquest is the objective of both the divine and the animal soul.
Right. And when he's talking about the animal soul conquering the body here, now he divides it again into, well, maybe it's just one part of the soul. Maybe it's just of the body. Maybe it's just the eyes, right? I was looking at something, but that was it, right? Maybe it's just the hand. Oh, I wasn't supposed to touch that thing, but I just subconsciously kind of my hand went and did it. It wasn't like I didn't plan to do it, right? It was just my hand that sinned. אף לא כולו אלא מקצתו לבד.
Furthermore, even when the evil does conquer the body, yet not all of the body falls under its dominion, but only part of it.
שיהיה שר למשמתו ונעשה לו מרכבה.
Subjecting it, that part of the body, to its discipline and causing it to be a chariot to the evil, as subservient to the evil as is a chariot to its driver.
Right. It may sound far-fetched, but we think about the part of the Shema which says, don't follow after your eyes and your heart, right? I mean, we know subconsciously our eyes will dart around, and if you're thinking something, your eyes sometimes will betray it, right? I'm playing cards with my kids. I don't want to look at their hand, but my son's flashing the hand. I don't want to, but I kind of glance over, right? So my eyes cheated, but I didn't cheat, right? It wasn't me. It was just my eyes, right? But, put that into a more serious situation. I do try not to cheat, and I try to apologize if I do. But in life, sometimes your eyes, where you're looking and how you look, betray something that's not really consciously thought out. And other parts of the body as well, obviously. Right? So he really takes a fine-tuned look at how well are we flowing as a soul through our body, how well we understand the user's manual for our body and for our soul, and how completely we can allow the other-centered soul to have guidance level control over every aspect of our body. Right? So you don't want to leave anything out. You don't want to be holding your mind, but then when you start talking, you just say whatever, right?
And further causing that part of the body to serve as a garment, wherein one of the animal souls aforementioned 3 garments will be clothed.
Right, and the Hebrew levush, להתלבש בו אחד משלושה לבושיה הנזכרים לעיל. Right, so the garments, a garment is a term to talk about when something is enclothing itself in something else, when something is, say, nested in something else. So the thought, speech, and action are garments of either soul. It's not the soul itself, it's something the soul puts on, takes off, uses to express itself, uses to elevate itself, or sometimes the opposite.
So if your eyes go astray without your controlling them, do you discipline your eyes by closing them, not letting them look at some stuff that they like to look at?
That's one strategy. Yeah, one strategy is by closing them. Another strategy is by looking at something productive, right? So say a young man's walking down the street and there's with his wife, and there's a young woman walking down the street who he might find attractive. He has a choice now. His eyes may dart over, and whoa, once he realizes it, now he can decide to kind of take a good look, Or he can look at his wife in the eyes and talk about, what do you want to do today, right? So I can actually control consciously what do my eyes consciously decide to do. And in North America, may say, who cares? You just took a look at something, what's the big deal? From this perspective, as soon as you consciously do it, now you're Russia, right? Maybe just in your eyes, but that may lead to some thoughts afterwards, right? So it's more complex and profound than maybe we let on in North America. But just that moment, you're making a choice between the divine soul and the animal soul. And so if you want to be a master of how the soul flows through the body, you want to track all those moments. And on top of it, Kabbalah says it's not by accident that this person walked by you and gave you this opportunity to make a choice, right? This is something your soul needed to learn. And so it gets even more importance because, as we said, the Ein Sof puts everything around us and is watching to see how we respond. So every moment is a chance to improve myself, is an opportunity, or to do the opposite. That's the game, yeah. I lost, where are we? Garments, yeah. דהיינו או במעשה לבד לעשות עבירות קלות ולא חמורות חס ושלום. Namely, the animal soul prevails either in deed alone, in the commission of minor transgressions only, not major ones, God forbid, for their animal soul has not the power to prevail to such an extent. או בדיבור לבד לדבר אבק לשון הרע וליצנות וחי גוונה.
Or it may prevail in speech alone, but merely in the utterance of that which borders on slander or scoffing, the evil being too weak to cause them to engage in actual slander or scoffing and the like.
So as we said, speech is a major pathway to mastery in Judaism. And one of the ways that the animal soul can gain an advantage here is just not by telling something negative about somebody, but just, a little teasing and something that I saw where it's not going to hurt anybody. And there's ways that animal soul can use speech to exert itself and express that aren't, you can't say, well, that this is a formal sin, but it's close enough, right? It's not the divine soul trying to use speech to help people around me, right? When I'm telling that half-juicy story that's not really gossip, that's not the divine soul trying to be helpful, right? It's not self-centered, put it that way, right? So the animal soul, if I'm not someone that would actually gossip, it's gonna, just remember this, remember that, wouldn't it be fun to talk about this? That's all, right? No harm done. But now the animal soul is expressing, right? So maybe I haven't halachically sinned, maybe, but from my inner dynamics, I'm lowering my level. I'm letting the animal soul have more strength, and I'm weakening the divine soul, and I'm getting imbalanced. Or it
may prevail in speech alone.
Thought alone. The next paragraph.
Or the evil may prevail in thought alone, in contemplations of sin, which are in certain respects worse than actual sin.
So this is a big statement. How to describe it? Thought. Why don't you go on? Thought is more refined.
Thought is more refined than speech and action. And of the soul's three garments, it is the one most intimately connected with the soul itself. Therefore, contemplations of sin can befoul the soul, even more than the sinful deed itself.
This is a very spiritual perspective. I could say, I just thought about it. What was the big deal, right? And even halakhically, you're actually not forbidden to think about many averas, right? I mean, if I think about eating, a shrimp cocktail, I'm not formally sinning. You're not forbidden to think about what it would taste like, right? There are two, right? You're not allowed to think about inappropriate relationships and about idol worship. Right? Those are the two big. I can't sit and imagine that stuff. That's an actual formal sin. So what's the big deal if I think about sinning? And the author points out, if I do something physically to sin, yeah, halakhically it's more serious, but I'm actually doing it with a lower aspect of my soul. If you remember the 4 levels of the soul, there's a 5th as well, but the 4 levels of the soul that relate to reality, it's not a good way to put it, okay? The 4 lower levels of the soul, the nefesh level is the lowest level, and when I'm physically sinning, that's involving the nefesh level, but it's very low in my soul's hierarchy. When I'm thinking about doing something counterproductive, right? I may be stewing about a situation or imagining something I'd like. Maybe I'm not halachically sinning, but I'm working with a very, very powerful and lofty aspect of my soul, the neshama level, the third level, right? So you're dealing with the river at its source as opposed to the river at its mouth, right? And if I dump toxic stuff into the river at its source, the whole river is going to get polluted, right? So you don't want to mess with the source of your being, your intellect, which causes your emotions, which causes your actions. You're actually impacting yourself on a deeper and on a higher level. I'm sorry, this is a depressing chapter, but this is it's like the welcome to reality. And know that of these categories, right, complete tzaddik is one or two in a generation. These are souls that are sent to really transform all of humanity and certainly all of Judaism. So this is such a rare individual, right?
So if you were thinking about stealing the 50 million,
Yeah.
then that's worse than actually stealing it.
From the perspective of my soul, if it was there and I didn't think about it, I just grabbed it and ran, and then I put it back and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, right? Okay, whatever. I just didn't think about it. My body did it. I was overcome, right? Yeah, that's affected me just on the nefesh level. Now, what's the chances I'm actually going to physically steal it without having thought about it? Practically none, right? So this isn't a real situation. But if it's just my body doing it, that's lower. If I'm thinking about it, but I haven't taken it, I'm affecting my soul at a higher level. It has more consequences spiritually. Yeah? But usually if you took the money, you also thought about it. So, good luck distinguishing those in real life. So complete tzaddik is one or two in a generation. An incomplete tzaddik, we saw there's 18,000 throughout history, so very, very rare individuals. This is not something most people can ever achieve. And that's fine. We have our own work, which is productive and that a tzaddik can't even do. Right? A Beinoni, we don't even know if any exists today. Right? Because history is actually creating a whole structure, and we're going lower and lower as history goes down. It's a whole other conversation of what history is and what Judaism is and what's being created. But if the thing being created is a being, earlier generations were the head and the heart and even the intestines. We're just the calluses on the feet. So we're generally lower level souls in this generation that are here, and we shouldn't expect to achieve the levels that many previous generations have had. So we don't even know if there exists a Beinoni of the Tanya today. It's a very high level for us. Then you get to the Rasha. On the one extreme, you have the complete Rasha that will learn no divine soul left consciously in their being anymore. It's just hovering above their consciousness, affecting them not consciously. That's a rare individual, the completely self-centered individual, the truly evil with no compunction and no sense of regret. And then you have the incomplete Rasha, and that's basically everybody. Right? So all the levels of the incomplete Rasha, that's just normal humanity. That's well high into the 90% of everybody that lives. Right? And for us, the game is, as we say, try to be a tzaddik. Don't be surprised that you can't, but try to be a tzaddik. Consider yourself a Rasha, because that's key to actually progressing. And finally, if you can't be a tzaddik, at least try to be Beinoni, and that's possible. Right? We don't know if anybody's actually achieving that level, but every one of us could. If we put in enough effort, we could be a Beinoni, which is where we balance our two souls, and then, although on the inside there's struggle, the divine soul always gets control over thought, speech, and action. And when we pick up, we'll pick up and learn about the complete Rasha next class.
Does your inner soul have to be in control to decide if you're trying to be an incomplete Rasha or a Beinoni?
Oh, so thanks everybody.
Thank you.
So I say the question again. I didn't understand.
Well, if you're